I'm Kathy Anderson. I'm an assistant director of early warning systems, and today we are talking about peer mentoring and empowering youth voice. This meeting's being recorded and it should be available the next couple of days on YouTube. We have closed captions if you want to take advantage of that. And as you can see, we have American Sign Language interpreters with us as well. We'll be sharing our PowerPoint slides in the chat, but they're also available on our website usually, but not today. They will be available in the This webinar is brought to you through the Office of Student Engagement and Supports. At OSPI, we believe each student needs to be prepared for post-secondary pathways, careers, and civic engagement. I'd like to share with you this photo from the Squaxin Island canoe journey from this past summer. This spring, it's just around the corner. And I know I've been enjoying longer days, a little bit warmer afternoons, and just seeing new growth shoot up. We invite you all to honor the traditional land on which each of you are today. And we have some links in our resources if you aren't sure where you're at yet. In my life, I mostly travel around the intersection of the traditional lands of the Squaxin Island, the Coast Salish, the Pullets, and the Squally tribes. And I'd like to acknowledge the Indigenous people who have stewarded this land since time immemorial and who still live here today. We live in a beautiful place. I want to encourage you to visit your local tribes and learn more about consultation, building relationships with tribes, benefits to youth and their families, and also just really interesting local history. We would love to connect you with our Office of Native Education also. We chose to talk about mentoring today and the power of youth voice because we know that under the right conditions, mentoring can make a huge difference in the pathways that are available to youth. It can enhance important measures like climate, student engagement. And youth voice also makes a huge difference in levels of engagement and efficiency and efficacy for students. Being part of the process increases buy-in, and students have valuable feedback to share that makes the school reflect the students and the families that they serve. And by offering mentoring to students that need it most and opportunities to share ideas with student voice, schools are providing an additional pathway to getting student needs met and getting timely feedback on potential actions a school can take to enhance the school experience overall. So today we're hoping you'll walk away knowing some foundational ideas on peer support programs. You will learn from Hope Squad and Natural Helpers implementers from Manson School District. And you'll also get ideas on how to elevate youth voice and get some resources to help you get started as well. I am joined today by my colleague, Francesca Matias. Francesca is our Youth Engagement Program Supervisor, and she oversees our Natural Helpers Grant Program. She has been a leader at OSPI advocating for youth voice and mentorship programs. So if you have questions about her or about mentoring or about youth voice, she is an awesome resource. We also have Dr. Jean Rhodes with us, who is an author, a researcher, professor at University of Massachusetts in Boston. Welcome, Dr. Rhodes. And we will get a more in-depth introduction to her in just a moment. But we also want to get to know you. So I'm going to launch a poll and we can see who is here. Usually we like to know your role, the grade band that you work with the most, and how familiar are you with our topic today, which is mentoring and youth voice. And while we run that poll, just a reminder that we do have a Q&A function. So if you have questions that you want our presenters to address today, feel free to use the Q&A. We'll be looking at the chat too, but it's really hard to keep up sometimes. So just know that those are available to you. And it looks like in our audience today, we have quite a few people in the counselor, school psychologist, community liaison space. Lots of district office folks as well. And we have quite a few middle or high school teachers or people who are in kind of that both space. And it looks like the majority of our audience is somewhat familiar with this topic. So good to know. We are going to go on to Francesca. Francesca, welcome.
Thanks, Kathy. Good morning, friends. Again, my name is Francesca Matias, Youth Engagement Program Supervisor for Student Engagement and Support. And I'm excited to talk to you about peer support programs. All right, so when it comes to youth, we know the students naturally go to their friends or peers when they have a problem, and we have the data to support this. In a statewide average of the 2023 Healthy Youth Survey, 30% of students reported to feelings of sadness and hopelessness in the last 12 months. But 50% of those students also reported that they turn to a friend or a peer when they have these feelings of sadness. So if we consider the students in our schools as an existing natural helping network, the programs like Natural Helpers and Hope Squad can really equip these students with the tools needed to not only be of better help to their friends, but to build relationships with trusted adults, as well as bringing a more positive school culture and climate. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with Natural Helpers specifically, the program is a cross-section of students and school staff who have been identified through an anonymous school-wide survey. And once selected as a natural helper, they take part in a retreat training where they learn to improve their helping skills and come together as a team. The training includes content on self-care, improving culture and climate of the school, becoming an asset builder with friends, helping skills, and to make referrals for the trusted adults. It's really important that it's emphasized the natural helpers by no means are supposed to replace a counselor or a therapist. And that's really emphasized through the self-care training that they receive. But this training experience is designed so that students have opportunities to meet appropriate adult referral sources. After the retreat, natural helpers participate in ongoing check-ins or ongoing training throughout the school year. And this is really just to enhance the basic skills they may have got on the retreat. It's also a great way to check in with the students and provide any support that they need. And it's also a great opportunity for the natural helpers to plan school-wide activities. And it also is an opportunity for students to share any concerns that they hear about, whether it be stress, cyberbullying, relationships, etc. And then lastly, we encourage to evaluate the program by serving the students who were natural helpers to get feedback on how to improve the program for the following school year. There's really 4 important roles that a natural helper takes part in. Again, self-care is the most important. We want to make sure they are taking good care of themselves before they can be of help to others. Improving the culture and climate, helping friends work through everyday problems, and again, referring friends with more serious concerns to those trusted adults. And as this pyramid illustrates, the majority of a natural helper's work is the proactive part, the self-care and the culture and climate. But it is important that they have the tools needed so that they can, again, be of help to their friends, and significant problems are referred to the appropriate adult. OSPI is currently piloting a Natural Helpers Reimagine program with 5 different school districts throughout the state. These schools are currently using an online draft toolkit, and it provides content like the survey, selection criteria, communication templates for schools and parents, lessons for the retreat, etc. We're currently gathering feedback from the schools that are piloting this program, and this will help inform us to create a final toolkit. There's a communication plan being developed, so as we roll out the toolkit when it's final, we will be sure to share it with all of you. And then lastly, student voice is a real key aspect to a successful peer support program, and we will hear more about that when we talk with Manson in the panel. These programs are most effective when students work in partnership with teachers and school staff to create meaningful change in our school community and, of course, the broader education system. Elevating student voice also benefits the school because it has a greater focus on equity and belonging. When we position students as equal partners, they become more involved and assume great control and responsibility, not just in school, but in their community as well. If you attended our Power of Youth Co-Design webinar back in May 2023, we did share a lot of great tools on how to invite students as an equal partner. Uh, um, Engaging students in decision-making is not only effective on the classroom level, but also at the school level. Again, to ensure there's a wide range of student voices that are to not only increase student engagement, but to see all viewpoints from the students. Collecting and acting on student feedback, it really does work against us to gather the feedback and not use it. Student perspectives not only need to be heard, but they need to be followed up on with action. Um, and I would also add to that, if action cannot be taken, share with the students why. Um, just having that open communication and transparency. And then finally, implementation matters. When we consider student voice to build a more inclusive and welcoming school, we get closer to a system that expands opportunities to all students and give them the experience they need to thrive well beyond high school. And that's it for me. Back to you, Kathy.
Thanks, Francesca. We are going to go to Dr. Rhodes next. And for the audience, just to know, Francesca has an amazing website with lots of resources, and the Natural Helpers Toolkit is going to be coming to our website as well. So you can be looking for that over the summer into next year. It should be pretty exciting to have that stuff available as well. For our keynote speaker today, we have Dr. Jean Rhodes. Dr. Rhodes is the Frank L. Boyden Professor of Psychology and Director of the Center for Evidence-Based Mentoring at the University of Massachusetts in Boston. She is also the co-founder of Mentor Pro, a platform for advancing effective mentoring and training. Dr. Rhodes has devoted her career to understanding positive youth development, the transition to adulthood, and mentoring, and has published over 200 scholarly papers, several books on this topic, which I highly recommend. Welcome, Dr. Rhodes. Glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And I see that there's 169 people on this call, so I'm really honored to have this opportunity to talk with you and share just some of the research that my team and I have done over the past 30 years. So let me just get started by thanking my team. In 2012, I founded the Center for Evidence-Based Mentoring at UMass Boston and have had incredible colleagues and students over the years who are really key to some of the findings I'm going to present today. I also wanted to start with a little bit of polling. Okay, so let's start just by saying, if you were to look at this, what do you think is more effective, peer mentoring or intergenerational mentoring? And just take a moment to kind of just, think about what your gut is. I'm also going to ask the next question, which is, meta-analysis is when you look at like all the studies on a particular topic. So, according to meta-analyses, on average, what do you think is more effective? Friendship-based mentoring, like kind of big brothers, big sisters, or ones that are really targeted and goal-focused? Um, I'm going to ask, according to meta-analysis, what's more effective, after-school programs or mentoring programs? That's a tough one. And when I say this, all of these are studies that I have conducted over the years with those students that you just saw. And what is more effective? And I guess the other one fell off, but kind of formal mentoring or youth-initiated mentoring. All right. I think it'll show the answers. Nope, I'm going to go back and tell you now. So the answer to this one is peer mentoring. Okay, oh, you guys got it right. Okay, peer mentoring, according to a meta-analysis that my team and I did, the first ever on peer mentoring, is actually twice as effective as intergenerational. The effect size was, what's considered in the moderate range, whereas intergenerational is more in the smaller range. And the reason is not necessarily that peers are necessarily more effective. It's that we tend to give more training and supervision to peer mentors than to older mentors. Older mentors, we just kind of let them go off and do their thing. And peer mentors, we provide a little bit more structure to that program. There are other reasons too, some of which, were brought up in the last talk. People really trust their peers as credible messengers. You thought that friendship mentoring on average was more effective, but actually targeted mentoring is 2 to 3 times more effective. So you have to think about, the context. It's a mentoring program where you're putting a person who's more experienced with a younger person, and when they have a goal that they're focused on and they're targeted to that goal, they tend to get better effects than if they're just kind of there to be friends. On average, what's more effective, after school programs or mentoring programs? By a wide margin, you guys voted for mentoring programs, but according to our recent meta-analysis, they're equally effective, which I find really interesting. Now, remember, this is overall, there's particular mentoring programs that are far more effective, but on average, mentoring programs and after school programs, if you look at the effects on children's academic, social, emotional, behavioral outcomes, even mental health outcomes, they tend to be fairly similar, which led my colleague and I to say, well, if what we're looking for is to improve those outcomes, it's a lot more efficient to just put more caring adults in these natural settings than to pull kids out of after school and put them with a mentor once a week. Because those after school programs tend to be, a lot more intensive. Kids see them, go to them more frequently. And finally, youth initiated mentoring is more effective than formal mentoring. And I'm going to talk to you a lot today about what youth initiated mentoring is, but just think about it in terms of the name. It's when a young person identifies a mentor and then is provided with opportunities to recruit them. Okay, so now that I've told you that, I'm going to give you a broad overview of the field of mentoring before I really focus in on youth-initiated mentoring. So what is mentoring? We have the Center for Evidence-Based Mentoring. This conversation today is about mentoring, but what exactly are we talking about when we say that word? It means something probably different to everyone out there. And so I wanted to just show you kind of different ways that researchers and practitioners have kind of thought about what is mentoring and how it can differ. So mentoring can occur across the young lifespan from early childhood to early adulthood. It can be one-on-one or group or one mentor to many. It can be focused on particular skills. Technology can be involved in it or not. The age of the mentor varies, the training level, the structure, all of these things. So take a moment and look at all these different ways that mentoring programs can vary. Because what I'm going to do is tell you that there's not a lot of research, but there's some research to tell you what is most effective. If we're wanting to maximize your outcome, where would you put your efforts? And so this is what we know from research. Technology-assisted mentoring actually improves outcomes. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the technology-assisted mentoring that I've been working on. We know that training and supervision makes a big difference. In fact, in that peer mentoring study I was telling you about, in the absence of training and supervision, the effect of peer mentors was basically zero. It was 0.03. But in the presence of a lot of training and supervision of the peer mentors, the effects were, very nice. They're moderate to high effects. We know that targeted is more effective. We know that the earlier you get to a young person in terms of early intervention, we've already learned about cross-age peer and goal-focused. But what we're going to focus on today, and believe me, I've written papers about all of these things. I could probably give a keynote about any of these particular things that are on this, and I'm really open to questions about it. But we're going to focus on this hybrid youth-initiated mentoring today because I think it's really applicable to kind of some of the work that you all are doing, and there's probably some implications for student voice in this. So that's why I chose to focus on this hybrid approach. And why? Well, one thing to keep in mind is that when you think, like, if someone were to say, what's a youth mentoring program? You would think, well, maybe something like Big Brothers Big Sisters or other programs like that. Did you know that very few adults actually volunteer to be mentors? We looked at census data, which is, tens of thousands of adults. And in 2017, the US Census put in a question. It was like a supplement. Do you volunteer mentor? Do you serve as a volunteer mentor? So we were able to actually see whether or not people actually said that they volunteered. It's only 1% of adults. And in fact, so it's, a small percentage of the adults in the population, and it's not exactly growing. It's staying pretty much the same. And in fact, since COVID, volunteerism has actually gone down. And so we're talking about a small number of people who are willing to give their time to somebody who might be unrelated and serve as a mentor. And so we can't really be thinking about mentoring as this abundant resource. We should probably be thinking of it as a scarce resource that we need to kind of shepherd very carefully and maybe use in certain situations. And so I would argue that when you think about volunteer mentoring, think about how to make the most of that volunteer hour because it's a very rare resource. The other thing that people talk about is, well, people have natural mentors. They have their teachers, and I see a lot of guidance counselors here. They have guidance counselors as mentors. They have, faith-based adults, neighborhood adults, after-school adults. There's lots of people that young people meet out there along the way, including older peers. But I think that it's important for you to realize that, yes, a lot of young people, and this was something, it's called the Adolescent Health Survey. It's given to 60,000 youth every few years. A lot of young people say that they have a natural mentor. And they actually used my definition in this survey. And it was like, other than your parents or whoever raised you, is there a caring person in your life who you go to support for support? Not everybody has one. You know, and we didn't, you know, we had a very good definition that's been used by research. But here's what's interesting. If just left to chance, more marginalized, more disadvantaged young people are much more less likely to say that they have a mentor, a natural mentor. So I'm building the argument that we can't really depend on formal mentors because it's such a small fraction. And we can't leave natural mentoring entirely to chance because in neighborhoods of concentrated poverty, there's simply fewer potential mentors. The ratio of teachers to students is much different. There's fewer opportunities for recreation. A lot of sports you have to pay to play. There's just fewer caring adults in the paths of more marginalized young people. And that's where we need to step up and say, well, what can we do to increase that? The other thing to bear in mind is this was, again, part of that same study that I did. When we looked at, well, who, you know, we said, do you have a mentor? And then the next question was, if you said yes, what do you kind of talk to and do with this natural mentor? And what was interesting is that if you look at this, they're, you know, both kids who are more marginalized and those who are more privileged are relying on them for emotional support. But the more marginalized, less privileged kids, the support that they get is more kind of practical. It's about how to get by, how to manage money. Whereas the more privileged kids, um, the mentors were more likely to be a role model. They were more likely to get their mentors from work and school. So you have a different kind of mentoring happening. And what you could argue from looking at these data is that they're less kind of oriented toward future dreams and things that will make a better life if you're more marginalized. So even if you have this natural mentor, you're not getting the same kind of role modeling that you might get if you're more privileged. So what we wanted to do in my lab is figure out how can we take young people who might not have mentors and teach them how to build social capital. Because in a person's network, there's what sociologists call strong ties, which are people they're very close to. And then there's these weak ties. They're the teachers, the guidance counselors, the coach. And how can we orient young people to recruit those ties, those weaker bridging kinds of ties that can open doors to new opportunities? There's nothing wrong with having a lot of, you know, very close family members as your mentors, but they're not going to be as able to open doors and introduce you to new ideas and opportunities. So years ago, we started working with the National Guard Youth Challenge program. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but there's about 30 different academies across the United States. And it's for young people who have dropped out of high school and are unemployed, but want to make something of their future. And so it's run by the National Guard, and the young people who apply for it and get accepted go and live on a military base. It's a quasi-military program. And we did a very rigorous evaluation of something they called youth-initiated mentoring, which was for a young person to sign up to join this program, they had to identify a caring adult in their lives who would help them achieve their goals. And bear in mind, these were not like the president of the student council. These were young people who had dropped out of school, but all of them were able to find somebody. And I actually went to some of the military bases and met these mentors. It was often like the bus driver or the judo instructor or someone who worked nearby. So it was very interesting to see who they picked. And what we found was that young people who had a mentoring relationship that they recruited were more likely to retain the effects of this program than those who did not have such relationships over time. So those having that mentor was the key thing that determined whether or not the effects of this intensive program worked. So we found that really interesting. That basically what would happen is young people would say, okay, my judo instructor is my mentor. And then the National Guard would write them a letter and say, you've been identified as a mentor, and then would provide training and support for that relationship. And that's why we call it a hybrid. It's something in between a natural mentor and a formal mentor. It's got the young person recruiting their own mentor, which is the natural part, and then the program supporting it. And so we moved that idea to the university. I work at the third most diverse university in the United States, UMass Boston. And we started with high school students. And what we did is we went into the high schools and we taught young people how to basically identify a good candidate to be their natural mentor, and then provided them with training in how to recruit them. And this was our first attempt at it. It was right after that National Guard study. And we found that students who learned how to recruit mentors began to place more value on those relationships, knew how to recruit them, and that they felt like those interactions had actually influenced their career development. And so we were very, very excited about that. And we continued to build this program. And the next thing we did is we did a study with first-gen college students just coming out of high school into college. This, I want you to just take a moment and let these results sink in. Students who happened to learn how to recruit mentors as they went into college had improved attitudes and behaviors around help seeking, had closer relationships with their instructors, and more importantly, at the end of the year, they had higher grades. And this wasn't just self-reported grades. We looked at the actual grades in the registrar, and people who learned how to recruit mentors were doing better. They had these great relationships with instructors, and they were earning higher grades. So there's something very powerful about giving someone the skills and permission to go out into their own networks. In this case, it was college network, and recruit caring adults and other people to serve as their natural mentors. We then did, of course, because I love doing meta-analyses, and we found that there's about maybe 8 or 9 mentoring programs in the world where young people are taught the skills to recruit natural mentors. And they're in the Netherlands. They're across a lot of our programs. And we did a meta-analysis, and we found out that these programs were more effective than your typical formal mentoring program. And that when you controlled for lots of different things, they were actually incredibly effective at improving a range of outcomes. And to answer you, Gail, yes, this presentation will be shared. And also, you can get a lot of the information that I'm sharing today. If you want to go to rhodeslab.org, all of these articles, you can download them if you want to really engage with them. But I'll give you that link at the end. So most recently, and this was led by my former doctoral student, Sarah Schwartz, we did a large randomized controlled trial. And basically, students coming into UMass were randomly assigned to either learn how to recruit caring adults, in college, not just at college, but in their lives. And the other half were randomly assigned not to. Everything was the same, but one had taken this course. And again, students who took this course had improved help-seeking behavior and attitudes and better relationships with mentors, higher social capital. So I feel like this is kind of a magic bullet, that you don't have to run a mentoring program, you don't have to recruit mentors, but all you have to do is train and orient young people to the value of social capital and of finding caring adults, and you can get these great outcomes. And I just want to show you this one last slide these are hot off the press. They haven't even been published yet. They're under review. but we looked at 10 years worth of data at my university on people who took our course. It's called Connected Futures. People who took our course, which taught them how to recruit social capital and caring adults, were 3.5 times more likely to graduate in 4 years. They were twice as likely to be retained between, at the end of their first year of college and their second year of college. And they were almost 3 times as likely to graduate within 6 years. And get this, it was the single strongest predictor of retention at my university, whether or not they had learned how to recruit social capital. So I believe that the findings are clear. We now have maybe 5 or 6 studies on this that show that it's an inexpensive way to get really good academic and help seeking and other things. And social capital is so important, particularly for marginalized young people. And left to on its own, it's not evenly distributed. Let me just see before I move on. Yeah, okay. So young people, so there's research that kind of puts this into a theory. And the idea is that you need both. You need to be able to figure out how to recruit a large net of social capital, but you also need to identify maybe 1 or 2 people that can help you along the way. It's called the anchor and net theory of social capital. And so young people who know how to identify anchors and cast these wide nets, but all the data I showed you required either a 4 or 12 session version of the curriculum. So I want to tell you right now that what I'm doing, and I'm almost done, is taking that effective approach and turning it into absolutely free online single session intervention in which students can learn how to recruit social capital and mentors in 20 minutes. And it's this new field called single session interventions, and we're building an SSI or a single session intervention around finding mentors. And we're doing this with technology as well. And I'm going to tell you for a quick moment about how I'm trying to scale some of my ideas about what's effective, and a partnership I have with a team out in California called Step Up. And it's for high school and early college. Well, actually, just 16 to 24-year-olds. They don't have to be in college. And it's teaching them how to recruit mentors, but also that's teaching to fish, but also stocking the pond. And that is creating networks from which they can fish. So the course that we're using to teach social capital, and the one that's going to be available to all of you, is going to be a single session, but these are some of the things that we cover. We talk about the importance of social capital. We get young people to think about their own social capital. We then kind of break it down and try to figure out what would prevent them from reaching out, because the active ingredient in all of this is reducing the hesitation to reach out. And so we walk them through the steps of this. And this course, you can get it now. It's called Connected Futures by going to Mentor Pro Academy, or you can get the shorter one, which will be available like probably in about 6 months. And when students finish teaching this course, taking this course, they get a certificate from the UMass Center for Evidence-Based Mentoring. We are also offering a live version of this course taught by one of the creators of this curriculum, which is for teachers and counselors. And it teaches them how to encourage their students to reach out and get social capital. So you can tell it's kind of like, I'm such a believer in this because I've seen the data, that it's kind of where my research is headed and my practice. So even with the right skills, there's a need to stock the pond. So I created this platform. It's called Mentor Pro, and you can just go to mentorpro.com, which is to support mentoring programs in getting the evidence-based tools they need, basically. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but mentees set goals. Mentors can monitor their challenges. You can message securely. You can put resources and courses on there. and track change. But what Step Up and I did was try to create this youth-initiated mentoring platform. So programs recruit and upload mentors. You can do this within a school, within alumni, and basically mentors set their availability and young people can search for these mentors on the platform. And it just takes the friction out of finding caring adults in their lives by letting them use a platform. And then we can see who is engaging and who isn't. And because of that, we've made changes. One is we ask mentors to sign a contract, we provide them with training, we ensure a diversity of mentors, and we continuously evaluate whether or not this program is working. And it's effective. We have evaluated it, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that not only the platform, but this connected futures component of it is very effective. So I'll end there, but I hope I've kind of gotten your appetite whetted for the idea of teaching young people the skills they need to recruit social capital and natural mentors. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dr. Rhodes. Let's give Dr. Rhodes a round of applause and hit our reaction buttons.
Thank you.
Yes. And if you do have questions for Dr. Rhodes, we'd love for you to use our Q&A function and add your questions there. I know we have one already. And the question is, what's the age range for a peer mentor? We have college students mentoring high school students. Is that close enough to be here?
Yeah, so that meta-analysis that I was talking about, the first ever meta-analysis, it's available on at the Center for Evidence-Based Mentoring website. It was high school students mentoring middle school students. But we've also done studies where slightly older college students mentor incoming college students. We have ones where it's a college student mentoring a high school student. The definition, according to Michael Karcher, who's like one of the world's experts on peer mentoring, is that the mentors are just slightly older, not, whole generational older.
It's such an interesting topic to think about. What difference does the age make and how effective is it? Because, yeah, the different programs have different levels. It's awesome to see how much research has been done on this topic.
Yeah, a lot has been. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm not seeing any other things in the Q&A at this time. But as people have questions, feel free to add them in there, and we'll go on to our meeting. Thanks, Dr. Rhodes.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We're going to move on to our panel next. We are so lucky today because we have a student with us, an actual real-life student. Our folks are from Manson School District today. Camille is with us, and Camille is a senior at Manson School District, and she's the president for Manson's Hope Squad. She has been a part of Hope Squad for 3 years since the founding. She's been through the training, the resources, and the support that the Hope Squad offers as well. And it wouldn't be in Manson School District without her because Camille advocated for this with her student voice. So welcome, Camille. We also have with us school counselor Kayla Hellison. Beyond her current role, she's also served youth as an elementary school counselor and the executive director of a rural nonprofit focused on removing barriers for youth. Kayla is passionate about supporting the whole child with trauma-invested practices and peer support programs. She also builds community partnerships, which help students succeed and find innovative solutions to support academic achievement for everyone. So thank you and welcome. Glad you are here. And I'm going to stop this slide at the moment, but we're going to find, where did I go? They're here somewhere. Why don't we start by having Camille talk a little bit about Hope Squad and how that evolved in Manson School District?
Yeah, thank you again for the introduction. Thanks for having us. Very grateful to be here and have the chance to share some of my experiences. As you mentioned, I was kind of a part of at least the thought of a Hope Squad or a program like it in Manson. My mom and sister and I, during COVID, we kind of thought up maybe starting a peer-to-peer support or at least a mentoring program in the school because we realized that really is where a lot of connection already naturally happens. And so if you can have mentoring kind of built into that, that it would be really effective, especially in COVID when a lot of people were struggling and not getting connection. And so we tried to start that, and we were in touch with Mrs. Hellison through Thrive, her position as executive director, and it never quite got off the ground because of COVID and funding and things. And so that was kind of a seed that was planted a little bit, and then Hope Squad was officially started in 2022 when we received some funding from the Together for Youth grant in Washington State. And so Mrs. Hellison and our other counselor, Mr. Broom, initiated that, and they got first, buy-in from staff. And then students were nominated in December through a system where peers nominated 2 to 3 students which they felt they could talk to and they were comfortable with. And so the result of that is a lot of diverse outcomes. So you have people from every friend group or social circle. And so you really end up with a Hope Squad with a lot of different people from different places so that you have your eyes and ears in a lot of different aspects of the school. And so I got started our first year, we had 30 students through grade 7 through 11, and it was really fun. That was my sophomore year, and we just worked on training, and that training is called QPR, which stands for Question, Persuade, and Refer. And it's really putting, like it was mentioned earlier, Dr. Rhodes, the training of inquisitive kids and curious kids that are there. And so that trains kids to be curious and look out for signs of a mental health situation. And then we are trained to refer those to adults and or handle those situations. And so last year was our second official year where we started doing some events. We have a Unity Day, which is like a bullying prevention day and awareness day. We had our first Hope Week, which Hope Week is a national organization. And so, like all across the country, there's a Hope Week. And so we did that, which is fun. Lunch games. And then this year, we really ramped things up, which was really fun. And I took the role as president, which was really fun. And we also do student retreats 2 or 3 times a year. And so we get to do bonding with each other and then also training. And so this year we did Hope Week, Unity Day. We had a fun summer retreat, and then we had a really fun event called Hope to the Hoop Night. And it was just an amazing community event that was between our school and our rival school about 7 miles away at a basketball game. And we took the opportunity of rivalry to actually turn it into a coming together moment. And so we had the Chelan and Manson Hope Squads doing like self-care activities in the commons throughout the game. We did a little speech at halftime sharing community resources. And then another really cool aspect of that was we had t-shirts that were Mrs. Hellison worked really hard and our students to get the money to buy t-shirts for 5th grade and up. 5th through 12th grade students to have the same t-shirts, and Chelan had the same t-shirts as well, which were teal, which is the national color for mental health awareness or suicide prevention and mental health awareness, and it's also the combination of Manson and Chelan's greens, or green and blue. And so it was really cool because during the basketball game, you look around and everyone's in teal. And so it kind of disrupts the rivalry thought. And so that was some big highlights from this year and kind of our progression throughout our 3 years.
Yeah, I hope I hope both teams have fun, right? That's so
Yes. Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And what an opportunity to turn that around to like full student support in that space
Totally.
instead of looking toward rivalry to, I don't know, amp people up.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
That's so cool. I love that you have so many things that were involved with that. You talked a little bit about Hope to the Hoop Night. I feel like you had another event that was really interesting. It was like a shred your stress. Do you want to talk a little bit about that event and what happened there?
Yes, so that was during the basketball game, and in the Commons, we had different stations. So we had Shred Your Stress, a pledge wall, and we sold Hope Floats. And so the Shred Your Stress station was someone comes up, anyone's welcome, and you write something down that's stressing you out, and then you put it through a little hand paper shredder, and it's just kind of the idea of, just letting it go, and then also the physical shredding something that's stressing you. And then our pledge wall was you write something down that you are either committing to for yourself or someone else to benefit mental health. So I will go on a walk once a week and clear my head or something like that. And so we have, Chelan, I think there were over 1,000 people there that night from Manson and Chelan communities, which is a lot for our tiny little town. And so that was really cool to see our big poster of a bunch of the accumulation of a lot of positive pledges and things going on. So those were some of the cool events we did there.
Yeah, and you talked about, I think you guys did like some kind of presentation as well, like at halftime maybe? Do you want to talk
Mhm.
about that too?
Yes, so we did a little speech at the girls' varsity and boys' varsity games where we had all of our Chelan and Manson Hope Squad members stand in the middle of the court. And so it really showed like unity and representation for the audience. And we presented about, what Hope Squad is, what our mission is in the Valley, and then also a lot of community resources. So hotline or crisis hotline numbers, the crisis unit here in our valley, Wenatchee area, and then some other resources that people can access. And they also got little slips into their programs that night, so they had them on paper. So that was a really cool tie-in. And then we, of course, advertised for people to come into the Commons and interact with us, and it was really fun.
That is so cool. I feel like it is so creative to combine those two events so that you have just like the spread of mental health literacy and knowledge of the resources. I think people a lot of times they would use them if they knew about them and
Yes.
get the message out to people in that way to have 1,000 people there to hear about what it is and what a cool program, what a great idea to spread peace. Um, Kayla, you've been involved with this and you're supervising the Hope Squad. How have you noticed it impacting the school? What have you seen changing?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. And as you can hear Camille speak about it as a student, obviously the student voice piece of it is really powerful, first and foremost. And we see that evidenced in a lot of ways. But I think just the training and um, support we give our peer leaders in our building really helps them understand what it is we're asking them to do and how they do that. We've seen a lot of positive impacts in our school culture. We have our program grades 6 through 12 right now, but we just extended it into the fourth and fifth grade as well as a junior Hope Squad. So that's an exciting component that we're excited to see how that grows. Really increases in the student and staff awareness around the mental health resources. You heard Camille talk about that just a moment ago, not only at our school level, but a community-wide level, which is really powerful when students are stepping into that role. We also have seen an increase of the knowledge of the safety protocols and procedures we have in our building to help students feel safe and welcome every day in our building. And for example, what our harassment, intimidation, and bullying processes are during Unity Day. Our students led presentations with their peers and shared with them, how do they connect with a safe adult when these things are going on? What is the process that they use to refer in our building? If they have mental health concerns, how do they refer those on? So students are training their peers essentially on what those resources are as well. We've also seen an increase in the reports that students and families are making to behavioral health supports in our community. So intakes for longer term mental health therapy, or even just our mobile crisis unit that Camille also shared about a bit ago. Those numbers are on the rise, which means students are knowing what the resources are and they're feeling comfortable to reach out to those. So all in all, I just think also there's just a greater sense of belonging in our building. And one example that stands out to me, Camille is our president this year, and she had the opportunity to meet with all of our newly nominated sixth graders this year about what the role is and encourage them to be part of what we're doing. And from that time, she mentioned to me the other day that she's walking through the hallway and she's a senior, and these sixth graders are, "Hey, Camille, how are you?" And they're feeling comfortable to come up to her and talk with her and engage. And I think that's just such a great example qualitatively that we see students, there's just a greater sense of belonging and connection because of our program here. And that student voice piece is such a huge component of that.
So amazing to get that kind of comfortability. I mean, just and I know that Manson's a smaller school, but just like the social capital of being able to talk to a senior, I feel like is really like that just volumes to the work that you've done. Do you want to talk a little bit about what it looks like in the elementary space? I know that that's new. What are some of the elementary considerations for getting something like this set up?
Yeah, I think the biggest consideration always is making sure that we're being intentional and we're going slow and we're taking our time to communicate what exactly it is that Hope Squad does and what it doesn't do. And so the really early on stages of our work in the elementary has been creating that buy-in with administrators and our staff to help them understand what the difference even is between Junior Hope Squad, which is that elementary age program, and our middle high school program in our district. And so just really being intentional about getting to staff meetings and talking with staff and administrators about what this is and creating a sense of buy-in. The next step then is making sure that we are communicating with parents about what it is and what it isn't. And one big concern, especially at the younger level, is, are we training students to become mini counselors? Are we putting them in a position that we're asking them to do the same things that school counselors are doing? And the answer to that is no. We really make sure through our training and support and even just our parent nights and talking with parents about what this is, that we are making it really clear that the school counselors and the adults in the building are still responsible for those crises and the follow-up on that. But really our students get to be in a place where they already are, because they're already hearing these conversations with their peers around concerns that they have. They're already the eyes and ears. And so how do we give them training and skills to know what to do with that information rather than feeling stuck? So at the elementary level, it's a lot of, I see someone lonely at lunchtime. Do I have the training and courage to go sit with them and invite a conversation? Out at recess, if there's kids that look like they're feeling lonely or aren't connected, can we start a game with them and include them in what we're doing? Just those basic leadership skills that are good human skills for students to learn, of kindness, respect, empathy, all those things you would want to see a student developing. So that's exciting. We have about 20 students in 4th and 5th grade in our Junior Hope Squad that were nominated and are going to move forward. So that just continues to build our program. But our next step really for that will be giving training this spring in the form of a retreat. We're hoping to get off campus and get some time together, do some team building, and help them learn about what this important role is and how we can support them.
That is so cool. And this is like a leadership training opportunity for younger kids too, and to make it so inclusive and have that. Wow, I could just see what a huge difference that would make in the culture of the school and the playground, and like thinking about lunch games. And like I know that like historically I think that people know that lunch is a high stress time for people, because it's like, who are you gonna sit with and what are you gonna do? And yeah, and so having those options I think as defaults is really, really smart. um let's see. I'm gonna
Question.
just again, go ahead, Francesca.
Yeah, so I touched a little bit in my presentation about the student selection piece. And you and I both know that Youth Voice is what really, it's the root of this program because the students say who they trust. For schools who haven't had this kind of program, what would you say to them if they see students who are nominated that they think, I don't know if this student belongs in this program, or maybe they've had some kind of behavioral issues or something along those lines. What would you say to that?
Yeah, that's such an excellent question, and it's real. It happens. And so we have teachers or other students that come down and say, "Hey, I saw so and so not behaving perfectly. What are you going to do about that?" And I think it's a great opportunity to talk through the power of student voice in our building and how we're not expecting leaders to be perfect. Certainly, as advisors, we have those conversations with our leaders when corrective conversations need to happen. But certainly, we're proud of students and their own peer groups being able to be trained on how to support the students in their circle. And that's really important because every peer group needs a leader and they already have them. So, how do we help actualize that leadership in our peer groups naturally through people that they already trust? So, yeah, it's tricky because, of course, in a leadership role, you are representing more than just yourself. You're representing Hope Squad, you're representing your school and your community. And whether we're wearing our Hope Squad shirts or not, people see us as a program and as a club always as Hope Squad members. So we talk a lot about that with our peers that are part of the program, but also reminding teachers and staff that it's important we have student voice and representation in all of our school. And so are our leaders going to be perfect? No, but we certainly are hopeful that the training that we're giving, the belonging that they feel as they come to meetings, all of those things are helping us move in the right direction. There are times, unfortunately, we do have to sit down with students and say, hey, here's some things I'm seeing that are concerns, and we're going to need to work through that on how that looks as far as your leadership capacity in this way, but providing that high expectation with high support, right? We definitely don't want students to feel worse after leaving, but also just those moments of having those really clear and kind conversations about the expectations go a long ways. So yeah, it's definitely possible and doable. In a small school, also a big school as well. I talk with my colleagues about that all the time of what that looks like in larger settings, but I really do think it's important that all voices are included somehow. In the nominations, we also make sure we're looking through, and we literally look at every student in our school and say, do they have somebody on Hope Squad that, that they are connected to? And if the answer is no, we need to do a better job of recruitment.
Yeah, one of the feedback, thank you for that, Kayla. One of the feedback we got in year one, as you were part of for the peer support grant, was some schools did experience some issues with the nomination. They felt it became a little bit of a popularity contest. And I just want to share that with the Natural Helpers Reimagine Toolkit we're piloting, we will be offering, and I don't remember if Hope Squad has this, a way to supplement the nomination so students can apply to be part of Natural Helpers, or a teacher, could say, hey, the student might do well in this type of program. Just throwing that out. And again, I don't remember if that was issues Manson had before, or if Hope Squad has a supplemental aspect to the nomination process.
Yeah, I feel like Hope Squad does a great job of providing us support from that national lens. I think really what I love also about it is there's some latitude for our schools to decide how we go about things like you just described, those local issues that we know are going to come up, especially in a small school of, we have classes of 40 and 50 per grade, right? And so we're smaller than a bigger district who might be able to generate more Hope Squad members, but the key is to find the right ones. And so I think, we have added as our own process, a nomination and application process, so that if students missed out the first time, or let's say they were a new student and they came after the nomination process happened, would they still have access to participating in this club? different things like that. But we certainly, every time we receive an application or a teacher nominates a student, we sit down as a group of advisors with support of our administrators. And we really carefully consider the fit for each student. And if the answer is not right now, then my colleague, Mr. Broom, and I sit down and have those conversations with students. We feel like that's really important, that we circle back with them and say, hey, not right now, but here's some things maybe that could help. Or they themselves might say, gosh, this isn't the right time for me right now. How can I maybe take a step back from this? So we encourage that two-way dialogue around the process as well.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Just because a student's nominated doesn't mean they're required to be part of the program. So, of course, students have the agency to say, I'm flattered, thank you, but not now.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that part up too, because during our parent meeting, it's a really important piece we stress with parents is that this is a choice and they know their student best. And so we really want to make sure that they are eyes wide open with full transparency, able to support their child in making this decision to step into this type of leadership role. So parent permission is required for Hope Squad participation. But like you said, participation is not mandatory and that's on purpose. But we also just tell parents it's the best part of what we do is, gosh, what an honor that your child, right, is seen by their peers, but also a large number of our staff as kind, honest, respectful, approachable, safe. Whether or not you choose Hope Squad, those are great things to take with you because those are great ways that you can continue to invest in the people around you in your day to day. So yeah, it's really important that parents are weighing in and that we're also keeping in touch with them as the year goes on. If they're seeing concerns, we want them to reach out to us and let us know so that we can sit down and have those conversations in a timely manner to support their students at school and at home.
Are there things that have changed since year 1 to year 3 that are like, we learned not to do this or we learned to do this better that you would want to share?
Did you want to talk about the officer voice piece? I feel like that's a really important piece. We added officers year 2 and 3 to increase more student voice. And I was hoping Camille could talk a little bit about how that's felt to her and what that's been like.
Yeah, so like she said, the second and third year, so that would have been last year we started that. And I think in the first way that it highlights student voice is that people are voting for candidates, right? It's like, who do I feel I want to represent this club? And then from then on, like even last year to this year, we've increased our officer meetings quite a bit. So last year we would have officer meetings here and there with our advisors, Mrs. Hellison and Mr. Broom, to talk about event planning and for us to lead meetings. And we created games and icebreakers, and we helped lead games at the retreats and some training. And so that's a really cool part of student voice. And I also think it's recepted very differently from even Hope Squad members to have your leaders sharing that stuff with you. And then this year we had, I want to say, an officer meeting like every 2 weeks. Sometimes more depending on like before the Hope to the Hoop night. We had a lot of planning to do, and that felt really cool. And I think it empowers our leaders because I'm one of the only seniors on the group, and so it was really cool to see these younger leaders feel empowered to like, okay, I'm gonna go, research this and email these people. And I think it's really great practice. And again, highlighting the student voice for people to come to the meeting with ideas about what we're gonna do at the event and things like that. And so that's something that we've definitely increased and changed from year 1 to now is the amount of officer meetings and the inclusion, of course, of officers.
That's great to have that integrated into the structure of the thing and to think about passing the torch even. I mean, like as a senior walking out, you want to make sure it continues and that the other students keep it going.
Yes. Can I add one other cool component that they've initiated is having a co-president, so I was like president-elect or co-president half of my sophomore year and then into my junior year, which I feel like really prepares kids to know the workload, know what they should come prepared for, and also kind of how to do it. And so I think that's something that's can be a cool way to approach it for any type of club is to have a president-elect or co-president. So it's more collaborative and you kind of learn the ropes a little bit. So you're more confident in that role.
Yeah, well, and how helpful to have a sounding board to bounce ideas off of too, because like especially with event planning, you need someone to be
Mhm.
like, is this gonna
Yes.
land or Mhm.
Yeah. Sure.
um so Camille, I know you've gone through the training, and one of the concerns that was brought up earlier was just about like the emotional toll of being on the Hope Squad. From what's been your experience with that, and what does it look like to do it well?
Yeah. So in my experience, it has not been emotionally draining or taken a toll on my emotional state at all. If anything, I think it's boosted my capability to be emotionally aware and to handle my own emotions because we're a big part of our curriculum in Hope Squad is self-care. And so while we put responsibility on students' shoulders to be aware and be curious and be able to have those conversations, we also reinforce it with, how to take care of yourself. And I put this down because I want to make sure I say it that the emphasis of a Hope Squad member is, in my opinion and my experience, has been more of being a curious, kind, and safe like listener. And then really the final goal is to be able to refer that to a safe adult. And so while I might facilitate a conversation with someone and be able to listen and ask the right questions to get them to maybe the point of where their mental health is not doing well, then ultimately I have the training to go refer it to a counselor. And so that's been my experience that it's really just training people to be good people and safe people to ultimately have the resources and the network to get them to either a crisis hotline or the crisis mobile unit or our school counselors. That's been my experience. Yeah.
And Kayla, I mean, you've been overseeing that process. What have you noticed about that part of it? Do you feel like students are well prepared, or does that fuel your training program? How does that work?
Yeah, I think a real honest thing I would say is time is always hard to find, right? With all the really important things that we're doing in schools. And this is just one component, right, of many things that we're focused here on in Manson. But I think what I've seen is carving out those regular meetings. So we at least meet every 2 weeks, sometimes more, like Camille said, as a whole squad. So that's all of our 6th through 12th grade members. And I think when we're intentional about utilizing the time as a blend of training, team building, and also sometimes the bigger school-wide event planning, that's where we hit the sweet spot. It's engaging for kids. It doesn't feel too heavy. We see a lot of buy-in, and I think what I'm most proud of our squad for is that they do balance self-care really well, and they come and talk to me or my colleague about if things are feeling like a little heavier this week, or they've got some big project going on in class. So how can we make these two things work? We're really teaching communication and life skills through that, right? That all of us as adults struggle with, and how do we manage the things that are on our plate and have balance. And so I think those are great outcomes that we're seeing. But yeah, taking time, we've done several activities around just self-care and how we fill how full our battery is and how we keep that refilled. And those are intentional conversations that we will loop back to. But time is always difficult. So we try to maximize that the best we can. If we had more time, that would be amazing. But I think that's where the retreats are really important too, because we can take a full day or a half day to really dive into some of those concepts a little bit more deeply, but also make it actionable, where we're not just saying things, but we're showing things. And, when we do team building or we show ways to take care of one another, that's way more powerful than the words that we're sharing as well. So it's a lot of intentionality, but I'm proud of our students and the way that they carry this leadership responsibility. And I'm really honored that we get to partner with them in this way with this work.
Well, and what a gift to to your future community to have people who are trained in those skills and to be able to pass them on, not just to their social circle of friends forever, but also to their kids, when thinking about it
I
that
agree. And I think the work just happens so naturally. I'm going to let Camille share an example of something that happened just last week at track practice. But
way.
whether kids are in circle or not, kids are reaching out. So I don't know if you wanted to share, but
Yeah, so track started last week and I throw shot put and discus, so we're down like by the throwing area. And our freshman, so he's new to track, and we don't have a previously established relationship or friendship really. But we're on the track team, and I'd like to think I'm a friendly person. And so I was like going over to the kettlebell station of our practice, and I just said, hey, how's it going? How are you doing? And he just kind of started opening up and sharing a lot of things that were not going well in his life and hadn't gone well in his life. And I think we probably spent 20 minutes or maybe more, mainly of just me listening. And I was talking to Mrs. Hellison about this, that really I felt like was an implementation of our Hope Squad training where I know how to listen, and I know that I wasn't just going to be like, oh, I have to go get my reps in. Like I knew that it was important and that he was being vulnerable, and we had to take advantage of that moment. And so I just was there and listening to him, and it really, again, proved the importance of Hope Squad or natural helpers, the structure where you have just people in place, in friend groups and in circles, that you never know when a kid is going to open up and feel vulnerable enough to share. And you can't always go to the counselor's office, or that might take too much for them to get the courage to go to a resource. And so to have someone who's there and to be curious, how's your day? How are you doing? And then able to listen and create a safe space. So that was one of my experience last week, and again, just proved to me and we were talking about it, that how important these things are, because I'm able to now, share some of those things and make sure that he's on our school's radar and make sure that he's going to get the help that he needs.
Mhm.
We did get a question about funding and just thinking about, I know that there's a grant going that Francesca talked about, but are you embedding this in your school improvement plan, or how are you going to keep it going?
Yeah, that is the $1 million question, no pun intended, right? But I think we talk a lot about that, and I think you asked a question earlier just about like what has changed from year 2 to year 3. And as years grow, you also have to look at how you size the work that you're doing for the funding that you have, while also wanting to make sure that we're listening to the ideas, these really great ideas kids have, and trying to make them happen. And so it's always the balance. But I'd say our funding comes from 3 main sources. The biggest one is grants and special funding applications that we put out there. And we have an incredibly generous community and greater community to support this work. We've also had really great success at the state level. We've been a recipient of the Department of Health grant recently, where we received quite a large grant funding to be able to continue this work with the proper supervision and school counselor oversight on the program. So that's been great. We also utilize fundraisers just like every other club. So we definitely are showing up to ball games and selling concessions and hustling that way. But also we have generous community businesses and donors that really believe in this work. And it goes back to what you said earlier, Kathy, around our community really is bought into this because they see the outcome. They see students leaving our system with not only the impact that they've made here on our school culture, but the impact that they've made on our community and the ability to have the skills to continue to impact our community in a positive way, not only in the workforce, but just as citizens in our valley and our state. And so I'm really proud of that. I'm thankful that we have a community that sees that. But it also comes down to, how do we as leaders of the programs make sure that we're creating information and utilizing evaluations and research and data to show the impact that our program has. And so we've created different reports and one sheets that just show, X amount of students because of this work have reported this impact, or X amount of students are reaching out to other resources in our community to get more support. So showing those quantitative data sets, but also the qualitative as well. So it's a balance and it takes time. And it's one part of what we do here, but it definitely is an important part, that funding piece. And it's something we're always mindful of.
Yeah, and Camille, I want to give you last word here, but as far as the training goes, if there was something that was going to go school wide, what kind of training would you want your other students to get?
Well, I think so. Part of the QPR training that I referenced earlier, so the first question and persuade, I feel like if those things are really what creates a curious and kind student in the way of questions. So, how are you doing today? And in our official training, it's a little more serious. If we're in a conversation, we're asking very direct questions about their mental state. But I think in general, if we could teach students how to be aware of people in their circle and be bold enough and courageous enough to ask those questions. So not necessarily shying away from, oh, I don't know if they're in a good spot right now. I don't want to really tip them over the edge. Kind of getting over that mindset and more thinking of how can I help? I think that would be a really cool thing to be school wide. And then also the training that to create that safe space and patience for students. So when you ask your friend how are they doing, instead of just be like, good, how are you? Instead, creating an environment where it's safe to be like, I'm really not doing good. I didn't sleep well last night. There was something with my parents. So being able to teach or train the patience and the kindness for students to create a safe space for all students to share.
Yeah, well, and life skills, because man, active listening is such a
Totally.
challenge, and it
Yes.
takes a lot of energy to do it really well. And
Hmm.
absolutely awesome. Well, thank you to our panel. Everybody can give them a round of applause. Thanks for being here today. Yay. So glad to have you. And if you have questions for our folks, if you can get them in the Q&A as well, that's awesome. Thank you. I'm going to reshare some slides so we can see these. Um, we do hope that what you've heard today doesn't stop here. So this doesn't have to be a unique experience to Manson School District or from Jean Rhodes's work. It can come to your school. So think about how this can look with your leadership teams, with your professional learning community, and maybe even with your students if you're out there in the classroom. We do have a few resources to share. Funding is a challenge this year, and I would recommend still trying to do that great work of finding those creative funding sources. We have an Unlocking Federal and State Program Funds document that you might want to check out. For our webinar series, we have a linked newsletter that is really high quality. We put a lot of time and energy into getting great articles from people like Dr. Rhodes. And we create our package with leadership team activities. So if you want to get engaged in leadership team activities and have something for your staff meeting, they're broken down into 15-minute, 30-minute, 90-minute increments. And we can talk a little bit about some websites. OSPI has a youth engagement page. And Dr. Rhodes, do you want to talk a little bit about the Center for Evidence-Based Mentoring and your resources?
Sure. So you can go to the center and there's lots of articles that I've written over the years. There's lots of resources. I also want to talk about the Chronicle of Evidence-Based Mentoring. It's a free newsletter that summarizes the latest research on student support and mentoring. And it comes out every 2 weeks with lots of articles and profiles and resources. And then Mentor Pro is the platform. And then we also have something called Mentor Pro Academy, which has training in mentoring for mental health, which I thought might be relevant to some of this. We've dedicated a lot of time in recent years to how to take what we know. I'm a clinical psychologist. I train clinicians, what we know, and translate it into ways that peers can be helpful with some, basic mental health skills. So that's what I wanted to put up there.
Very nice. Yeah. And what awesome resources from the center. So thank you for sharing those with us today as well. I hope everybody checks it out because it's a cool site. We also have people at OSPI, so if you ever want to chat with us, we are here for you as well. Next month on our webinar, we're going to be talking about how to support alternative learning options. If you are already registered here, you're here live, you're already registered for this, you'll get a reminder. But please do share the link with your friends who might also be interested as well. I'm going to launch our poll for our evaluation. And that is in there now. And we have always loved having evaluation stuff because it helps us improve our webinars. And every month we look at what you say and we try to change what we can to improve it and to come up with good speakers and topics that are relevant to you. My hope is that you'll take a minute and look at it for us and help us adjust. And also, please give us your ideas for people that you like, who you want to hear more about, and topics that you would like, because we're looking at those for this next year. Leave that up in the background. We would love to see you get clock hours for joining us. We offer equity clock hours. If you join live, registered the whole year in Zoom. And so you still do need to register for clock hours separately. It's a monthly thing in PD Enroller. PD Enroller will send an evaluation to your email, and then we verify your attendance and we release your hours. If you're watching the video later, the process changes just a little bit. You're going to register. You're going to watch the video online on YouTube. And then when you finish that, you're going to complete our graduation equity webinar survey, our feedback survey. It's on our webpage if you need to find it. And then as far as the PD Enroller evaluation, what happens is we'll register you in PD Enroller. I'll bounce an evaluation back to you. And if you have questions about this, you can also email Ronnie Larson. She does our clock hours support. Her email's there on the bottom for you as well. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you this next month. Have a great March, everybody.